I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and welcome back to another episode of Career Coach Office Hours. Tuesday at noon, Friday at 9 a.m., I do a show that's designed to help you with your career. This week, I'm making a change, and the Tuesday shows could be focused on questions I've received about job search. The Friday shows could be focused about other things like hiring more effectively, managing and leading, resolving workplace-related issues. But regardless of which show you watch, in the chat, you can always put a different type of question. It can always be about job search. It can always be about those other areas, management, leadership, resolving workplace issues, hiring better, things along those lines. Because my experience in search, my experience as a coach, my MSW, my experience with psychoanalytic training, what I read, what I watch, all tells me that folks need help in a lot of different dimensions professionally. And that's what I'm here to do. Help you with job search today and with the other issues on Friday. Those are what the focus of the show will be on. But, people have different needs at different times. I don't want to wait. So again, if you have a question for me, put it into chat. I'd be very happy to answer. Now, I've got a number of job search questions I've received from people. And 2, 4, 6, 7 questions today about job hunting. And the first one is, did a company ever ask the recruiters to use bait and switch tactics regarding salary when interviewing for employment? I'm sure that's happened. And at the same time, firms have also learned that when they employ such tactics, they piss people off. And they're less likely to join if they think the job is paying, I'm just picking numbers at random, 120, and they come out with an offer and say, good news, how's 92? What do you think? And it just doesn't work. Usually what happens is they tell the story about how you didn't grade out to the highest level of the position. And by comparison with people internally, you're just not as strong. Well, how the hell do you know that? But they're used to throwing that stuff at you. Sometimes budgets come into play and they have to downgrade a position. You're in mid-stride on the interview process. They just keep going. They don't communicate the change, and suddenly you get a bad offer. But the question was, does that happen? Has that happened? Absolutely, without a doubt. And if you're being represented by a third-party recruiter, it may also happen because, as I saw happen on many occasions, people puff up the salary to attract people, and then they think they can persuade someone to join a firm at a lower level because they're excited about the role. So using the previous example of a job that they say pays to 120, let's say it pays to 110. Say, oh, things have changed. And you really did well, and they really want to bring you on board. And they're going to accelerate your career growth. But right now they assess you to 110, which they see as the max for you. But there's bonus, but there's whatever else, other stories they give. And they're hoping to close the deal. So again, does it happen? Without a doubt. Is it likely to happen? Can't really tell, but it does happen. And most organizations play by the rules. Can you submit your LinkedIn profile instead of a resume or a CV when applying for a job? Yes. If you're submitting a resume through LinkedIn, you can use your profile. But there's a problem with that. And the problem is your profile is like a generic resume. It's not tailored for the specific job you're submitting it for. It's a good profile, I'm sure. You wouldn't be asking this question if it was a bad one. But the problem is it's not targeted at a specific job. You can modify it before you submit it, but that modification has to stay in place. You can't just submit that and then change it for the next job that you're submitting it for. It remains a static thing that's submitted. So can it be used? Yes. Is it ideal? No. And maybe you're just lazy and you don't want to submit a resume and do the customization that will hopefully help you actually get the interview. Don't be lazy. Do the work. If you don't do the work, you're not likely to get the interview. So yes, you save time, but you could have saved even more time by not submitting it because it didn't make a case for your candidacy and that what you could do for this job. That's normally the reason people get turned down. It's not that the resume got there late. It's that the resume doesn't make a case for why they fit the job. Next question. Should I write a different resume if I apply for different positions with the same company? No. I believe that what you should do, see, the systems track everything. And thus, if you submit a resume for one position and then a different one for another, the issue comes down to they'll recognize it for your email address. They'll recognize it from other attributes in your background and go, oh, what's with this? There's a difference here. But if what you do is have a master resume that covers all the points related to both jobs, and then a cover email that talks about what you've done that relates to the work that is being sought, what the skills are that they're looking for, how you've done this before, and talk about that and make that page one. What that does is stuff the applicant tracking system and make it believe that those are all keywords, and thus that cover letter helps a lot. The resume is consistent in both cases, but page one is a little bit different. And it's designed to, I don't want to say fool the applicant tracking system, but make it easy for the ATS to figure out that you're qualified. But let me back up for a second. Don't apply for jobs because then you're in a system that's making decisions for an organization. There's no humanity there. Can you network to a hiring manager? Can you network to someone in the group and have them submit your resume so that they earn an employee referral bonus? Remember, the way organizations think is if one of their people refers someone, or there's some version of social proof about your candidacy, you go to the head of the line. And as one of my guests on my podcast said, I think the interview came out today. It's Sean O'Keefe in Launch Your Career. So you can find that on YouTube. If you go to my page there, go to JobSearchTV, that's the channel there, and look for Launch Your Career, Get Ahead, I believe is the title of the interview. He points out that there's a big difference in how firms respond to someone that's referred to them versus someone who applies, for whom there's no connection internally. So take advantage of that. Always go that route first before you go to the ATS. Give it half a day. Do the work. If you don't do the work, the impact winds up being that you don't get the interview. No interview, no job, right? So don't fool around with this stuff. Make the fits obvious for people so that in this way you can see that, they can see that you're qualified to do the job. Let's come to the next question. How do you know the trustworthiness of a person from a job interview? Well, there's an old story about how people can tell someone is lying because they won't look them in the eye, which in an in-person interview, in a interview over Zoom, People believe that, but I'll tell you from experience, the best liars I ever met can look you square in the eye and lie to you. If anything, the ones who break eye contact are more likely to feel uncomfortable and being truthful about revealing something. So, how can you tell someone's lying? You really can't. However, they may say something that reveals that they're an idiot. They may say something that reveals that, shall we say, they're exaggerating because you know something about the organization that they're working for, have met someone from there, and thus know that they're throwing some bull at you. And that isn't going to work, will it? So listen for the lies, listen for the BS, listen for things that are said that reveal an exaggeration. You'll spot it, but beyond that, no, you really can't tell. Let's go to the next question. At what point during the process of interviewing for a job, accepting the job, and beginning work is the best time to ask if your employer monitors social media accounts? Assume that they do, and you don't have to ask. Assume that anything you post is something that they can spot. And at some arbitrary point, they will. Now, at some point, you're going to get connection requests from people who work at your firm through LinkedIn, right? This is what's happened in previous organizations. It's going to happen at this one. As such, your boss, with whom you're now connected, can monitor what you're doing on LinkedIn. They may go over to Facebook. They may also look at your social media account during the interview process. So I would say to you, always make the assumption that you're being monitored. And, after you've accepted the offer, I think it's fair to say, I'm joining and I'm curious to what degree do you monitor social media? And they may say, why? I just want to know. I believe that at times, we may have different opinions about certain things, and I don't want to have an adverse impact upon, how I'm being seen here. So I just want to know, do you monitor social media? Now, there's another thing I'll bring up, and that is some organizations, like JP Morgan Chase, prohibit people from having much in the way of information on their LinkedIn profile about what they do. And if anything, they insist that you strip out anything related to what you do on LinkedIn. Again, at the time that you accept the offer, that's a time to ask, and if necessary, back away, because that has a career impact upon you. And for firms like that, they also want to approve anything that you write. They also want to approve any speaking engagements that you take. They want to control your career because what you say may have an impact on the organization. I get it, but it also has an impact on you. And you have to be aware of that at some point, that they're that extreme. But do that post-offer. You can even go so far as to do it prior to your acceptance. But I think it's fair to assume that an employee may casually notice your LinkedIn profile, even if they say we don't have a policy about monitoring it. Follow me? So just be aware that most monitoring, quote unquote, occurs casually. And there are organizations that formally do it. You can do it before acceptance. You can do it after acceptance. Choice is yours, but always assume that they're going to monitor in some way. Next to last question. Before I do this, I just want to mention something to you. And that is on Friday, October 1st, Lynn Williams invited me to join her on Clubhouse. That's Lynne Williams. invited me to join her on Clubhouse and talk about interviewing because she knows I'm world class at that. So if you're on the Clubhouse app, join us then. It's on October 1st at 11 a.m. Eastern for 1 hour. Many of you may be commuting if you're on the West Coast during that time. Others of you can plug in your headphones and listen while you're at work. Figure it out. Love to have you there. Hope have you join us. Maybe come up on stage and ask questions. Love to take your questions from you. So again, October 1st, 2021, 11 a.m. Eastern, and hope to see you there. Now, next question, bear with me. When one is interviewing for a job and the interviewer asks a question that's not legal to ask, how should you respond? So, many of you think you know what's legal and you don't. So I have to preface it by saying that. I'm going to repeat that. Many of you think you know a legal question from an illegal question, but you don't. And if you challenge them right away, you might fall into a bad situation with them. If you do know that this is an illegal question, for example, you're in a locality where it's illegal to ask what your current salary is, you can pause for a second and say, my understanding is that for jobs in New York City employers are not legally allowed to ask what my current salary is. Am I mistaken here? And put it back on them to suddenly go, oh, no, I'm sorry, made a mistake. Old habits die hard. That's a classic place where a mistake can occur. And that's an expensive mistake because you file a complaint with the city or with the state, and suddenly they're investigating. No one wants to be investigated, especially if there's more than one complaint that occurs. So very simply, put yourself in the position of taking the high road. And assume that most questions are going to be legal. And every once in a while, you know with certainty that this is an illegal question. And then you have to ask a question back. And then listen to their explanation and see if it makes sense to you. I want to check your answer. No disrespect is intended, but my understanding was when we cover territory like this, it's an illegal question. Most of the time, the illegal questions are about money, how much you're making. They can ask how much you're looking for. That is a legal question, but your current salary is not. They can ask you, so, young lady, you planning on having any kids? No one does that anymore, but I'm using this as an extreme example. And as such, just ask a question back. My understanding is that isn't the legal question. Am I wrong about that? And have them explain, well, I don't understand it to be the case. But let me walk back from that one. And thus you're being courteous in doing the challenge. You're not saying, hey, that's an illegal question. And by the way, to use that New York example, let's say you're being interviewed by an employer for a job in Nebraska, and Nebraska is a state where they can legally ask. That you're in New York doesn't give you that same protection. It's about their locality that matters. Okay, so I've got one last question for today, which is, why is it a good idea to publish on LinkedIn? And the answer is really very simple. One of the things you want to be doing is being seen as a subject matter expert. And as an SME, a subject matter expert, how do people discover you're capable? Most people think that if they do a good job, and everyone knows that they do a good job, that's how they're going to get known. But that's a pretty small universe of people. It's the people who work at your employer. And within that, there's a subset who knows about you, right? So let's not kid ourselves. It's not enough that people at your current company know you do a good job. They know that you know what you claim to know. It's important that people outside your current organization get a sense of what your capabilities are. And thus, publishing on LinkedIn, number one, it's easily located by Google. And thus, if people search for that topic, that title, you, and a whole host of other ways, what happens is the LinkedIn article comes up in the search results. And thus, they get a chance to read what you wrote. Also on LinkedIn, it's associated with your profile. As search firms, as corporate recruiters start to investigate you and your background, they'll see that there and thus get an idea of what your capabilities are. Write for LinkedIn. Share content in the feed on LinkedIn. Because what's interesting is often organizations, recruiters who are looking at LinkedIn will find the stuff that you've shared and see that you have an expertise around whatever it is that you're sharing. And thus, it helps to brand you as an expert. Even if it's just shares, it helps to brand you as an expert. Writing is better. Creating video and then uploading it to LinkedIn, better yet. Doing podcast interviews, uploading it to LinkedIn, even better. Don't hesitate. Always create content and upload it to LinkedIn because it becomes a repository of information associated with your profile that demonstrates your expertise and what your capabilities are. So I hope you found today's show helpful. I'll be back on Friday with the next show at 9 a.m. Eastern. And all you have to do is come back, watch me again, and it'll also be on YouTube. It's available as a Facebook Live through my page there, Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. You can watch me live there. I believe chat comes through Facebook and LinkedIn, not through YouTube. So if you have a question for me, better to do it through those medium rather than through YouTube. I could be wrong. I'll check on that for next time. But again, if you have a question between shows, email it to me at thebiggamehunter@gmail.com. In the subject line, put the phrase office hours. So this way I know what it's about. Connect with me on LinkedIn if we're not already connected. LinkedIn.com/IN/the Also, No BS Job Search Advice Radio comes out 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, with advice for job hunters good anywhere in the world. It's the #1 podcast on Apple Podcasts for job search with 2,200 plus episodes already. JobSearchTV.com on YouTube and Amazon. 7,000 plus videos on YouTube. Amazon is less because I'm gradually bringing stuff there, but it's still quite a few hundred of my recent posts. And I'll also mention I have a number of books that you can purchase on Amazon. The two that I always point to are The Ultimate Job Interview Framework and The Right Answers to Tough Interview Questions. Both books will help you immensely with your interview. Have a terrific day, and most importantly, be great. Take care.